All right. How's it going, everybody? Yeah, that's right. Two CEO barbecues in 1 week. It's been, I suppose you can call it a busy week on the barbecue, but I basically talk into a microphone for a living. So can you really call that work and busy? Well, yes, I can, but my wife doesn't always agree with me. Anyways, I have a rare earths slash copper story on here today. This is a relatively unknown copper story and a slash rare earth story. It's a small market cap, about 7 million bucks. They have a very big land package in Tasmania, and then after that, we'll jump to South America, specifically Chile and then also Colombia, respectively. We're looking at a $28 million copper explorer co and a $38 million primarily silver explorer co. And this is actually silver, well, mostly silver. Most of them are not actually silver. But anyways, I'll cut the cackle here. But as always, please don't take anything I say in here personally. I'm not actually talking to you by any means. I have no idea who you are. For all I know, you might not like dogs or something. So the fact that I'm drilling these CEOs doesn't mean that I'm buying their stock. It doesn't mean that I own it, and it by far does not mean that you should blindly do so either. I have personally never made any money worth writing home about in this space. So please don't use any of this as your guide, as independent research, nor as investment advice. Just look at these conversations as conversations. They're general and impersonal conversations between two talking heads on the internet. So if you don't enjoy losing your own money, you should go to setterplus.ca, where you will find official filings from these companies. You want to analyze them, but then also talk to a professional investment advisor before taking your own decision in the end. Because the mineral exploration, development, and mining industry is, despite what anyone would tell you out there, the hardest industry or among the hardest industries to profitably deploy capital in. There are just so many risks, most of which not visible to the naked eye. So again, if you don't do enough research, you will lose your money. In addition, I want you to know that some of the companies that you're going to hear mentioned in here, specifically CopperCorp, is a paying client. So they're paying for the production of this video, the graphics and whatever you're going to see in here, the research behind all of that. That's what they're paying for. I never send in questions up front. The companies don't have a say in what gets discussed or not discussed in a video. They don't get editing rights. But at the same time, that doesn't mean you should think of this as independent research, because it will also include a lot of forward-looking statements about uncertain events that may or may not happen in the future. So be careful with this. And with all that said, the first company here for today is CopperCorp Resources. That's a company well known to Resource Talks listeners, since I've spoken to Steve probably about a half a dozen times already. And they have basically copper and rare earth elements projects in Tasmania, that's off the coast of Australia. Companies listed on the TSX Ventures Exchange under the ticker symbol CPER, where an average of about 30,000 shares trade each day, with a 52-week high of about 21 cents and a 52-week low of about 8 cents. With a market cap of 7.5 million Canadian dollars at the time of recording of this video, and about 86 million shares outstanding today, this is an 8.5 cent stock. So not unlike most of the companies out there, close to its 52-week lows right now. 24% of those shares are in the hands of insiders. Crescott Capital is also in there. I believe they own about 5% of the company, and I also believe I've heard a Ross Beatty being invested in here as well. A couple of other big names. As of the last financial statements, which came in at the end of September of last year, the company had about $5 million in current assets, most of which was in actual cash and some in prepaid expenses on top of that. That sat on the balance sheet against current liabilities of virtually nothing, so about $170,000, mostly in the form of account payables, and there's also no long-term debt here. As it always is, you want to go to setterplus.ca yourself to see the most up-to-date financial data, because after the statement was published, CopperCorp has raised capital at the beginning of the year. Actually, just a few weeks ago, closing a give or take $1.4 million oversubscribed raise. And of course, running a company is a going financial concern. So financial situations change, but right now, as it stands, as far as I understand it, as of a couple of weeks ago, it's about $5.2 million in the bank that the company has. So enterprise value about $2 million that we're talking about here. CopperCorp spends about $115,000 a month in G&E, that is, or at least over the first 9 months of last year. And they're also actively exploring, which costed about $1 million over that first 9 months of last year. So again, you want to check the financial situation by the time you're watching this. But numbers aside, the elevator pitch for CopperCorp is simple. They have a 100% owned license portfolio of about 1,800. I don't know why I cannot talk today. I'm kind of trying to be quick here. But it's 1,800 square kilometers of land in Tasmania, where over 25 mines have operated historically, and 5 of which are still operating today. And actually, CopperCorp currently controls about 2% of the land mass of the whole island. So, fun fact there. But it's again, it's big geology that they're chasing here. So we're talking multi-kilometer geophysical anomalies, multi-kilometer IOCG alteration structures. So again, chasing potential elephants here. But recently, CopperCorp has been drilling some interesting stuff at their rare earths project. That's the Razorback project. Some high-grade trio, whatever that might be, which I hope to find out today what that actually is. But that has shot up the Razorback project to the top of their importance list, and a 5,000 meter drill program has just been announced on this project. So yeah, Steve, talk to me about that, about Razorback. What did you find, and why is your focus on that project right now?
Yeah, we're focusing on this project. We actually picked it up in June earlier this year, Antonio, and we officially got granted it in August. So we've done a little bit of homework. It's been drilled in the past, but it was drilled for copper, and it was drilled by a company that kind of went insolvent, and it went to a public auction. So we picked it up ostensibly for the copper only. It has rare earths in it, and we realized actually they have quite substantial. So we have a 30-meter intersection of 2.1% TREO, and that's total rare earth oxides. Okay, so within that, there's certain rare earths that are worth more than others. There's about 5 or 6 of them which everybody which everybody needs, or they're the ones that are used in magnets, and they're the ones that are the ones that you can actually trade. There's a lot of rare earths out there, and there's only very few places in the world that actually process it. But the ones that are valuable are the heavy and lighter rare earths, but there's about 5 of them. And we have those, fortunately, within the rocks that we have. And interesting enough, I mean, we have a 7-kilometer strike of this mineralization, of which there's only 1 hole put into this zone. And at surface, we have up to sort of 14 to 18% TREO, which we've actually taken rock samples for. So look, this is something came out of left field, Anthony. To be honest with you, we took the project for copper, and it's adjacent to the 3 million ton copper mine to the north, which is going back into production by Sibanye. And we've just started the program, I think, last week. I'm going down there next week. I'm staying in Australia for a month and overseeing some of the drilling that we're doing. And we actually have 5.5 million in the bank as of today. And yeah, we did a small financing recently. And look, there's people out there that think, well, why did you bother doing it? You already had 4 million in the bank anyway. Why would you bother doing this financing? The real reason is that it's not that we would run out of money by doing this program. We just want to make sure that to get the vote of confidence that this is something that our shareholders wanted to do. So it wasn't a rights offering, Antonio, per se, but obviously we went back to the people who were in at higher levels, say, hey, if you liked us then, you'll like us now. And that's why it ended up being oversubscribed. And in fact, it's the same people who were in the original one, not all of them, obviously, but a fair proportion of the original shareholders that got involved in the private placement at 50 cents are in this private placement now, which is good. Yeah, and the insiders took a small position, but honestly, we had to be elbowed out of the way because there was a little bit of a strong demand, because we actually announced the financing at a discount to market. In other words, we'd already locked in the price with the securities exchange, and the warrant is 12 cents and expires at the end of 2025. So there's a little bit of upside that was available. And we basically said, look, guys, we're really sorry. We raised money at the highest point in the copper market cycle. We got the timing right there, but here's an opportunity to get back in. And hey, we're about to start drilling next week. That's basically it in a nutshell, Antonio.
Right. Talk to me about that about those grades of rare earths, as I called them trio. You call them
Yeah.
TREO. What is I read something like 18.6%. What does that even mean? What's high grade in the space? What's low grade in the space?
Um, zero point 0.5 is the kind of like the number that everybody's looking for. 2% is considered high grade. 18% would indicate that there's been some sort of superficial enrichment, if you like, like in sometimes epithermal gold deposits in laterite horizons, you get these elevated grades that don't correspond to what's at depth. And that's what's happening here. So it looks like our average grade is somewhere around 0.5 to 2%.
Okay.
And that's considered economic. We're in what's called an alkali intrusive. And what happens is these rare earths occur in alkali intrusives, and either you're mining the clay layers at the top, which have been superficially enriched, or you're mining the, if you like, the source rock. And we've got the source rock is where we're looking at the moment, and we've just taken on some consultants to help us with the mineralogy, because I don't know if you realize, but these rare earths are extremely complicated. It's like, even as a geologist, it's like talking another language, and the processing is extremely complicated. And that's why the Chinese have kind of cornered the market, because they've spent 10 years in doing their R&D, and the rest of the world's trying to catch up. So herein lies the slight difference between, say, lithium and rare earths. Lithium is kind of everywhere, and it can be discovered. And now spodumene, the recoveries are getting a lot better. So there are places around the world like Canada, and there's lots of other places in the world that can come onto production. Rare earths, it's quite kind of interesting, because they're not as rare. The rare earths is a misnomer. I mean, they're kind of everywhere. It's only in elevated concentrations, but it's all about the recovery. It's all about the production. It's about the processing. And now there's a refinery on the west coast of Australia called Iluka, which is just being developed right now by a company called Iluka, which is just being developed about 200 kilometers north of Perth. And they're having an accelerated process to try and compete, if you like, with the Chinese situation. So what's going to happen here is, if you like, the Western allies are seriously trying to make sure that they have an adequate supply of the rare earths, and that refinery will become the central point where it gets financed. But it's still 2 years away, and the Australian government, I think with the support of the other Western governments as well, has put 2 billion of investment into it. So not insignificant amount into. So it's all about processing. It's not about the actual product. You can find quite a lot of this product around the world. It's all about where you can actually process it and recover the rare earths.
Yeah, so that's how I understand it too, is that metallurgy is a big challenge here, right? Typically with rare earths, because they just stick together with just so many other elements and whatnot. So I understand that you found high grade of this, of these rare earth elements that we are talking about here, but how does that influence your overall thesis for the copper gold deposit? Like, does that make the metallurgy more challenging?
No, it doesn't make it. It doesn't change. They're actually quite separated most of the time. So we've now, in this Razorback property at the southern end of it, which is called South Darwin, we're drilling if you like, the rare earths, which is the topical situation that we find ourselves in today. But the northern end is lacking in rare earths, and it's a copper gold situation. And the copper and gold is almost 1-to-1, like 1 gram. 1% copper, 1 gram gold, which is exactly what you want, which is exactly the same as the Mount Lyell deposit. So yeah, we went in there. That's called the Duke Zone, and the length of the property is 20 odd kilometers. So these prospects are quite far apart, and we're just going into the one that is topical right now, simply because this is where the shareholders are telling us that they want us to focus. But we've taken over 300 samples from surface right now. They're being analyzed, being processed in the lab, but they're from throughout the property. So to answer your question, no, it hasn't changed the thesis whatsoever. We're still ostensibly a copper company.
Okay, but it also doesn't affect the potential viability of your projects there? Like it doesn't break your metallurgy or the structure of the geology or something else that is too big for my brain?
Uh, Look, I can't say without a shadow of doubt that it won't, because I'm not quite sure what the mineralogy of whatever we find is going to be, but unlikely is what I would say. If we're going in for rare earths, hopefully the majority of rare earths, and at the northern zone, we haven't seen any real evidence of rare earths, and so we're hoping there's a distinct zonation between them. They tend to be on a vertical profile, so where the intrusive is around there, that tends to be where the rare earths are. And the thesis is that Mount Lyell is much higher. So if you imagine this whole project of ours is on its side. So at the top where Mount Lyell is the epithermal, and as you're going this way, you're going more down into the guts of it, into the intrusive itself. So closer to the intrusive, more rare earths; further away, more copper gold. And
Right.
that's what we're hoping is going to happen. And that's what our geologists are telling us seems to be evidence from looking at the rocks.
Okay. So, well, it potentially could be split into just two
Yes.
projects that happen to be adjacent, but they host different commodities, basically.
And now,
Okay.
obviously, there will be a zone in the middle that probably has a little bit of both, and that's in this area called the Hyde Zone. We think that the Hyde Zone might be, but we haven't even looked at it. Nobody's drilled it. Look, of this area of rare earth interest, which is about 7 kilometers long by 1.52 kilometers wide, only 10% of it is even being looked at. So, look, we got a lot of upside on that, but we're not losing our focus on the copper.
What do you think is driving mineralization here? Because I mean, this is you're going with an IOCG
Iron oxide, copper,
intrusive,
gold. Yeah.
right? Well, you're going at that thesis. Is the same thing driving the rare earth mineralization?
Yeah, if you look at Olympic Dam and all of these, they all have that's what put us onto it in the first place, is that an IOCG often has these. And we were a bit surprised. If you remember one of the last discussions that we have another project called Alpine. We don't get any rare earths in there. In fact, we get cobalt. And so in certain types of IOCGs, you have another suite of mineralogy. And that is an older package of rocks, the AMC, the Alpine. And we've got a younger set, which seems to be more of these. Look, honestly, us geologists, we're not really very finite in our descriptions of things. And we like to so there's a wide spectrum is what I'm trying to say, is at one end, you've got the pure one. And this one that we're looking at here at Darwin is more like, I'm not going to say, I don't want to draw the analogy with Olympic Dam, but Carpentaria, all of those types of ones, it has the mineralogy more similar to those. That's kind of what I'm saying. There is a spectrum.
Okay. But I also, when I'm thinking about Olympic Dam, I'm also thinking about uranium, sort of almost instantaneously.
Yeah.
Are you picking up anomalous?
No.
Okay.
No, and what? Funny thing is, we did have a meeting with, I think I'll say it, Rio Tinto recently about this, and that was the first question they asked us. And of course, we at the time we recognized it, but we didn't know what was significant about that. Well, we subsequently realized that if you transport the ore either in an ore container or in a truck, a certain level of uranium creates alarm bells. Unfortunately, we're underneath that. But yes, you're absolutely right. Uranium is in Olympic Dam as well. I mean, it's probably one of the largest ore deposits in the world, but it's got a little bit of everything. But yes, there is a uranium component. Fortunately, we don't seem to have that with this one.
Well, what about chalcopyrite and molybdenum? Is that something you also have to have in this type of situation?
There is, in this one, yes, there is. We do have them, and it is just below the copper horizon. We intersected, the rare earth horizon. We intersected a copper horizon. We don't understand at this time what the relationship is between the two, if they're genetically related or something else is going on. But yes, obviously there is a copper component, and it's still early days. What we've done is we've reanalyzed. It's called ST005 hole from a program that was put in, I think it's 2018. And what we had to do is we had to reanalyze the whole hole, because they had actually analyzed for all of the rare earths. We've now analyzed for all of them, because at the time it wasn't a thing. In 2018, it wasn't such a if you like an amount of interest that there is today. But the copper is just below the rare earth horizon. So there is obviously a genetic relationship here, and we're not quite sure quite what it is yet, or it could be something that's been faulted in. We have no idea, but it's early days. I mean, yeah, we just started this program. That's kind of the excitement too. In fact, yesterday I have to segue just a bit. Ross Beatty was talking at the conference here, and he was talking about the value of a deposit that never been drilled before far outweighs one that's been partially drilled with some success. It's kind of an interesting, so we're at that sort of, it has been drilled and it has a successful hole. So we're kind of in that former zone, not the latter one. It hasn't been drilled out yet, or we don't really know too much about it. So he reckons that those are ones who are getting a lot higher valuation than holes that, then if you have several holes already into it. So we just got one into this horizon so far. So I'm taking a long time to explain to you. We don't really know at this stage what it is. Yeah.
Right. Where I'm coming from with this is because I'm going to sound smarter than I really am, and someone else has helped me with this. But this is a story that I follow very closely that is also going for an IOCG model, and at one of their zones, they're noticing molybdenum and chalco in the hanging wall of what is a target that is also happens to be very close to massive intrusions. So now it all starts piecing together. But what you're telling me is that you're maybe one step behind knowing if that's the case, if I get it correctly.
Correct. We are, and we definitely don't have much molybdenum. So we got a different genetics to whatever one you're talking about there. They all are slightly different in the way that they put together, and nature's just going to be kind to you or unkind to you the way where it plays out. But again, it's going to be all about taking bulk samples and trying to see what the recoveries are going to be like, and what you can and what you can't recover. No, we don't have molybdenum, so I have a feeling that's a more continental climate that they're talking about. That's where you tend to get the molybdenum and copper. But all I'm saying is that they're also very different.
Right. Yeah. Well, someone recently told me that bringing, finding a deposit of this sort, or of any sort really, but specifically with IOCGs, because they're just so fluent. It's not one thing that's well defined out there. They even have different names and whatnot. But it's more of like buying a secondhand puzzle and looking for the puzzle pieces sort of to piece together. What do you think is the next piece for you to, what's the next piece that you're looking for with this drill program?
What we're doing is we're going to drill underneath this horizon that was drilled before, step back 50 meters. And because we're actually, we set up the drill hole before, and they didn't know that they'd done this, but they set it up right in the rare earth mineralization, went across one zone into another one. So we're going to step up and go across the two of them. So hopefully we're going to get a good cross section of the whole unit, and then we'll have a better understanding. That's when we're going to start have maybe the eureka moment as to how it all fits together. But all I'll say is that if just drilled the top part of it, the hanging wall side, we want to get to the footwall, and then when we get to the footwall, then okay, it's driven by this intrusive, or it's a type of IOCG that got this type of genetics. We just don't have enough information. Imagine if you have the ore body there and you just kind of drill the top of it. You haven't drilled through it. You've got to go through the body altogether. So our next level of knowledge is getting underneath where they drilled before, and then we're going to go north into that 7-kilometer zone.
Okay. So if you had to, in terms of percentage, the 5,000 meters that you're going for right now, that's is all of it just going to be focused on what you just told me, like 100%, or is it going to be split?
Yeah, it is a very good question, because we talk about in the news release phase 1, which is the 1,200, because we're going to step back as soon as we drill 2 holes and say, okay, then where are we going to go with this? Because it might well be that we end up going up to the northern end of the property towards the Duke zone, where a more common copper gold scenario might be, and that would be more bang for your buck. This is a nice distraction, having the rare earths, but we're going to analyze it piece by piece as we go along. That's how it's going to work.
But so
I can't really tell you if we're going to drill it all there or not.
Right. But the phase 1, that's all what do you call it, the Darwin zone, I believe?
Yeah, Darwin, South Darwin zone. That's correct.
Okay,
Darwin zone, South Darwin within the Darwin zone. Yes,
all right.
correct.
And are you going deeper this time? Because it's 1200. What are you doing? 2 holes?
2 holes. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah.
okay. So 600 meters, give or take per hole, or is it like one 800 and one 400?
No, it's two 600s. We assume, but look, this is a fluid environment that we're living in terms of how we proceed with it. But suffice it to say, it's not going to be constrained by economics, by the cost. It's going to be constrained by what they see in the holes, and that's why I'm pretty excited to get down. I think they're about 30 meters down now, so we're not expecting to hit this horizon until much north of 100, 150. So like by the time I get down there, we get into the guts of it, and then we can make some decisions. But as to where we're going to go with this program, I mean, I'm just walking around the conference here, Antonio, and I can see that people are really concerned about their balance sheet. So look, this is going to be our main concern. Like at the moment, we look pretty flush compared to a lot of junior companies out there with 5.5 million in the bank, and you just don't know what's going to happen around the corner. So yes, we intend to drill 5,000 meters, and we have a lot of targets on the site. But the order in which we're going to drill them and why we're going to drill them is going to be changing. And I think anybody who is rational would, when you're spending $300 per meter per hole, you want to get it right.
Right. Oh, but this is not helicopter supported because you said 300.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because I thought, because last time we spoke with some of the other targets that you have that are sort of deeper into the, let's not call it a jungle because it's not, but deeper into the forest. It's a forest, I suppose we can call it that.
Yeah.
You told me that you use helicopter because you don't want to disturb, well, the Tasmanian
Yeah,
government
no,
doesn't allow you to disturb. So that
Antonio, that was a different project.
yeah, yeah,
That was called Dora. It's in
right.
the same belt of rocks. You're absolutely right, 100%. But this one already has a road network on it, so providing you're using a network of roads that's already in place, that's acceptable. It takes about 2 to 3 weeks to get a drill permit if you want to drill one outside of something that's already been disturbed.
Okay.
And then depending on where we decide to put it, it might well be a helicopter, but we don't anticipate that from what we can see. There's a nice grid of roads already on the property right now.
But so you have $5.5 million. What are you budgeting for G&A? 1.5 or something like that?
Yes.
Okay. And so that leaves you with this 5,000 meters is going to cost you 1.5. That still leaves you with $2.5 million to potentially expand that drill program or go somewhere else and drill after that. And you basically don't have to raise money anymore this year.
We don't.
Okay.
And that's the whole point. That's the whole thesis of CopperCorp, actually. It's never to get to a point when you start feeling the sharks in the water coming around for you. No, it's totally the point. And part of the reason why we raise this money. It puts you in a much stronger position.
Right. Yeah. And it also fits within the thesis of take the money when it's there, not when you need it.
Well, there was another angle to this. I'll just be honest with you. I'm not trying to be coy or anything, but we could see that there's a whole bunch of junior companies out there who are getting short of cash and would be raising money. And everybody said, just before Christmas, you got to be nuts to raise this money. But we had a board meeting and we predicted that the whole bunch of juniors would be going for, January is the whole new year. It's the new, focus of the company here. They get out there. It's like going to a prom and showing themselves off. But we decided to get in there beforehand because we knew that this was going to be a rush. Just yesterday, I was at the VRIC conference, and I would say that, more than 30% of the companies are looking to raise cash, and they have a cash balance of less than $1.5 million. It's not a good situation. So they're raising enough money to support their G&A for next year. I think, CopperCorp's in a much better position there. We can actually do stuff with the money instead of just, twiddling our thumbs.
Okay. When's that 1,200 meters? I suppose you're using one drill, so probably going to take a couple of weeks to drill. But what are you thinking? Results by the end of Q1?
Yeah, I would say so. And also we're going to have a continual slew of numbers coming out as a result of those 300 rock samples, and we're continuing to take. So the news flow is going to be pretty good. And we got one other project that we were working on last time, and I might have mentioned it to you, Jasper Hills. And I'm quite keen on that one. It's near Savage River Mine. And we took a whole bunch of samples, did a bunch of geophysics. So there's going to be a little bit of news on that one it's a high grade. It's up to 16% copper in parts, but again, it's like a kind of really weird looking base metal. It's a copper gold and a base metal coexisting in an area which has been mined in the 1930s. And we're not really quite sure how it fits into the whole equation of this IOCG belt. But the point is you get, you can see the rocks at surface. It's very easy to do exploration. And we'll be having some news from that one too. So other than Razorback, we'll have a little bit of news from there. And also we've just employed a person to do a resource calculation at Alpine. So we're going to start looking into that, because the meetings that I did have with some of the majors, that was really what they were interested in, is, okay, how many tons of the higher grade material that you have at depth at Alpine do you think you might have? So we've just got a couple of experts that we're going to be using to try and put a resource calculation together. I mean, at the moment we're just going through how are we going to do it and what we're going to do, and this is in order to try and attract a major into that belt, because when you're trying to drill a hole which is more than 350 meters, it's getting pretty expensive. As a junior company, you blow your budget pretty quick if you had a miss on your first hole.
Of course. What are we talking about here? Like an official MRE, or is this more of a scoping study?
Oh, it's just a scoping study. So
okay.
Yeah, I would say.
When do you think that's going to come out? Because you say, so you have these grab samples or chip samples, and then you have, by the end of Q1, you told me, drill results from this phase 1, 1,200 meters. Where is the scoping study?
Well, that one's low down on the totem pole of us trying to, in terms of importance, I would say probably July, August, somewhere around there.
Okay.
Yeah, like we'd wait because at the moment it's the summer in Tasmania, so we're going all out with the field crew in the field, and that would be something that those guys would concentrate on after the field season, and kind of the summer winds down in about April, May. So yeah, it would be after that, I would imagine.
Okay, sure. But you're gonna be keeping busy this year, and I'm glad you mentioned the thing with you sitting down with the majors, because sort of the whole idea behind this was that you have a bunch of ground. Some of it is not cheap to drill and explore, so you want to get that strategic partner in. That's where sort of your background comes in, of course.
Yeah.
But what else I've also been noticing in Tasmania, I actually read an article that said that mineral exploration costs, mineral exploration expenditures in Tasmania had hit an all-time low an all-time high, excuse me, type of thing. So I believe they were talking about something like 40 million bucks was spent on exploration in Tasmania last year. Still a lot for that jurisdiction. So
you're a numbers guy, I can tell, Antonio. If you read down between those numbers, I'd say Sibanye for a large part of that. And this is the Mount Lyell. They're going in to open it up again. So I'd imagine there's exploration around a known mine. And I would argue that grassroots exploration like we've got is probably flatlining. It's more around the known deposits there. There's a few of them, Hellier and all these other ones that are there, Rosebery. It's probably what we would call brownfields exploration. Like it's more around a known deposit. I would say there are grassroots companies, and there is some grassroots drilling, but I've been told by the head geologist for Tasmania that we spend the most as a junior company on exploration.
Yeah, but so grassroots was about 5 million bucks. Out of that, about 40, I believe 44. So we give or take 10, 12, 11%, something along those lines was grassroots. Have you been paying attention to what's been coming out of the ground, though, in some of the other companies, colleagues, if you will? I'm thinking about Flynn Gold, for example, or other names like that.
Well, Flynn Gold is, there's a bit of cross-pollination with some of the directors. You'd have to ask them, I think. I have been keeping an eye on it, but, I would say that they have not met with the success that we have as a company. Can I just leave it at that?
Sure. Yeah. Well, no, I don't mean to ask about feedback on them. What I'm thinking about is that I understand that getting a major, strategic in as a partner, but what about sort of a merger of equals, if you will? Is that even a possibility at this stage?
There is one company that we had to look at, but when we went through the if you like, the share structure and how it would look as a joint company. It's kind of like one of those things where that unless there's a really good reason to do a merger, it often doesn't work for juniors. It does for majors taking over juniors, obviously, but two junior companies merging, unless one has great assets and the other one has a lot of money, there's not a lot of point in having two groups have great projects but no money. It tends to end up getting a worse situation than it was before. Although on paper the geologists would be, they'd be drooling over it. But in terms of, we got 1,800 square kilometers. In order to merge with another company, I would say that it would have to be somebody who has deep pockets, because we would dearly love to drill another $5 million at Alpine. So that would be and I don't see too many juniors out there with a cash balance of, of more than 5 million that would be interested in taking what we have on. So, yeah, I mean, we have floated the idea, Antonio, but it has not seriously, and certainly not with Flynn.
Okay. It'd also be interesting to see what happens in 2024, whether the demand increases for juniors to explore there now that we've had this 31% spike on an annual basis in terms of expenditures. Would you be willing to option out a project or even outright sell something to a smaller company? Is that an option?
Yeah, I mean, everything's on the books, right? Everything will be considered. Look, we're in the business. Like, I often, when young people come into this business, and they ask me, so what's the advantage of a junior company over a senior company? Well, let's think of a cruise liner or a tanker and a little sailing boat. The only thing that we can do is we can turn around quicker than they can. Bottom line is we're all floating in the ocean going the same way. And it's the same with us. I mean, we have to adapt to whatever political environment, whatever local circumstances occur. And that's the only advantage we really got, and obviously lower G&A. And so in terms of this, I mean, I really can't tell which direction we're going to go at the moment. All I'm saying is we need to keep the budget. We need to keep a certain amount of money in the budget to stay solvent, and we need to be doing something that the public wants. If the shareholders want us to go looking for rare earths, we'll certainly look for rare earths, but we're not losing focus of all the other things we're doing. If an M&A opportunity comes up, obviously we'll consider it. Look, I've got two-pronged approach. We're doing our exploration at Razorback, and I'm doing, like you said, with my background, talking to all the majors about wanting to get involved in the bigger package. And that's all I'm focusing on right now. If some junior comes to me with a great idea, of course I'll look at it. That's the advantage of being us. We can move very quickly. Big companies can't. If you want to get a joint venture with a large company, guaranteed it'll take you 3 months by the time it's got through all the different levels and back and all the lawyers backwards and forwards. Junior companies can do a deal very quickly, but it has to be very appealing. It has to make sense.
Yep. Unfortunately, I have a little bit of a first-person experience with that. That seems a long story, but that was quite poetic there on talking about the ships. I know you've got to go though, because you're heading over to the conference, trying to get new eyeballs on the story. So yeah, what am I not asking you here? What should I be asking you?
I thought you were gonna maybe go down the line with the rare earths a bit more, but so I've done a whole bunch of homework on what type of host rock I've got, but I think we're done on the rare earths and everything else, so that's all good. Like, the rare earth space is very special. I did go to a conference recently in London, and it was all about rare earths, and it was kind of interesting how the politicians are really quite nervous about the control that one country, China, has. So no, I think you covered everything. I thought you were going to go drill deeper into the rare earths. That's all. Sure.
Yeah, though I'm thinking we can do sort of a separate podcast on that whenever you have more time, just so we can spend like an hour longer talking specifically about the rare earth space, host minerals, just the different metallurgy and stuff like that. So I mean, I do want to use that homework, but we should reschedule and just have a standalone podcast regarding rare earths and not specifically about CopperCorp. So that'd be cool.
I would like to get back to you as well once we've completed this drill program, just tell you how it went.
Yeah, of course. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me today.
Thanks, Antonio. Appreciate it.
All right, next up is Torq Resources, a copper and gold exploration company with assets in Chile. Companies listed on the TSX Ventures Exchange under the ticker symbol TORQ, where an average of about 115,000 shares trade each day, with a 52-week high of 71 cents and a 52-week low of about 20 cents. With a market cap of give or take 28 million bucks Canadian today, and 133 million shares outstanding, this is a 21-cent stock, quite like all the rest in here, currently at that 52-week low. There are about 45 million warrants to my calculations and about 9 million options outstanding, resulting in 187 million fully diluted shares. About 14% of those shares are owned by management and directors who notably have been buying in the open market as the share price has gone through the usual market shenanigans, if you will. 15.5% of the company, is also owned by Goldfields. That's another company likely known to the channel, and they recently increased their exposure to Torq in the last financing. Talking about financings, as of the last financial statement, which is dated September 30th, the company had about $4.5 million in current assets, most of which in actual cash and some prepaid expenses next to that. That sat on the balance sheet against current liabilities of about $3.5 million, about 2/3 of which is part of the loan facility that they have. And about $1.5 million is made up of account payables. As it always is, though, you want to go to setterplus.ca yourself by the time you're listening to this to see the most up-to-date financial data. Because also, for example, with Torq, after the statement was published, they closed a $5.3 million financing. Of course, keeping the lights on and the staff happy doesn't happen without dollar bills either. And to my calculations, which are based on that last financial statements, Torq spends about $500,000 a month outside of the exploration activities. So mostly on stuff like salaries, marketing is in their office, and so on and so forth. Numbers aside, though, there are 3 projects that we'll cover today. Well, there's basically 3 projects that the company has an option on. All 3 are in Chile, what I would call northern Chile, actually, and they all have beautiful names, if I may add. And so I'm going to take it from north to south, and the project that interests me the most is called Margarita. This is a relatively new discovery for the company. They made it in 2022. It's an IOCG style mineralization, so primarily copper and gold intrusive system, with the best intercepts here showing 90 meters of almost a percent copper and almost 0.9 grams per ton of gold. This discovery lies on a current land package of about 1,500 hectares, and although they made it quickly, this discovery after they started to drill, it was not a surprise because it's located within the coastal Cordillera Belt, which hosts a teeny tiny, maybe the IOCG discovery that nobody's ever heard about by the name of Candelaria. Kidding, of course, on the tiny part. But there are other, maybe lesser known, but still working and globally important IOCG deposits on the same belt. So it's in the right neighborhood, basically. And to date, this is an 800-meter mineralized strike, but every speculator's favorite words incoming, it is open in all directions. This was a shallow RC drilling, as far as I could tell, but again, sufficient to provide a lot of pathfinding data for the company while also confirming that IOCG / intrusive thesis. And I believe in total about 12,000 meters has been drilled already in 3 phases, with the next phase being planned for this summer. As I said, all 3 of the projects are under option, so this one too. And Torq has to complete 3 more payments each summer for the next 3 years. So I'm seeing $1.2 million this year. There's $2 million that has to be completed next year, and $2.5 million in 2026 if they want that 100% ownership of the claims, with a 1% NSR being payable to the current owner, half of which is also buyable for $2 million. So that's one of the projects. Then moving south from that, some 40 kilometers south, is where the Santa Cecilia project is. I told you it's good names that they have. And while the Margarita project was situated within an IOCG belt, this one is situated within a copper porphyry belt that is also characterized by epithermal, so think hot water gold deposits, basically, that are relatively young in age, if I may add. So we could round it up to about 30 million years old in age, which again, kind of young for rocks. This is a smaller property than Margarita, but it's a porphyry target, as I said. So unlike an IOCG, it needs less space. It's also right next door to the Norte Abierto project, which is the fourth largest undeveloped gold project in the world. And it is owned by your favorite rivals, Newmont and Barrick. Torq's initial drill program here made a discovery, I believe, on the second drill hole by drilling almost 560 meters of 0.4 grams per ton gold and 0.2% copper, with an interesting molybdenum credit to it as well, which also might be a point of discussion later on. And it was all between 450 to 1,000 meters deep, about the same depth as historic exploration. Only these grades came back. Only these holes came back with higher grades. All of this will be followed up shortly, by the way, as this is where Torq is drilling first in 2024. This project is also under an option with 5 payments on it still outstanding, and it's quite a bit more expensive because we're talking, so the first payment not as big, so it's $600,000 this year, and then $1 million next year, but then it starts really growing after that. So $3 million in 2026, $5 million in 2027, and $15 million in 2028, on top of work expenditure equating to $4.5 million this year and $8 million next year, which, if completed all of that and paid, will result in a 3% NSR remaining, again, in the hands of the owner, part of which can be bought back, just like Margarita. And then, and I'm trying not to be too long-winded here, but moving even farther south, almost in a straight line from Sicilia, so close to the Vicuña district, actually, we find Andrea, another beautiful name, and our project is almost the same size as Margarita, so 1,200 hectares, but it is high up in the mountains, so up to 5,000 meters of elevation. A lot of exploration has happened here in the 80s and the 90s, but it was mainly targeted at gold and silver epithermal deposits. But Torq says that the porphyry potential is underexplored here, and that's what they think could be gotten out of here. This too is under option with smaller payments than the previous ones. So $200,000 this year, $300,000 next year, $1 million in 2026, and $4 million in 2027, which will also result in an NSR being left behind. This time it's 1.5% buyable completely, so 100% buyable for $3 million. So there's a lot going. This is not a focus of the company as far as I understand it for now, but we'll touch upon Andrea as well in the conversation. But we basically have three projects. Excuse me. We have an IOCG target. We have a copper gold porphyry style target, and another but earlier stage potential porphyry target. Three assets, each one of which, according to Torq itself, has the potential to be a company maker. But as I said, none of them comes cheap, and drilling high up in the Andes, not cheap either. So, Sean, that's exactly what I want to talk to you about. What I'm wondering, why not focus on only one of these projects and let the options on the other expire, given that each one of those on its own could be a company maker?
Well, I think the the key word there is could. So if I knew for sure which one would be, then I could take that advice and allow the options to expire. But just speaking candidly, in one of the things that's incumbent upon us, obviously, is to deliver shareholder value. And we don't go out and do all this and take all these risks so that we can have technical success or academic joy. We have to make money for shareholders. And one way of doing that, one risk that we can mitigate, is dilution as best we can. But that has been particularly challenging here these last, 2-3 years, in fact. So you can see the way those deals were constructed, with payments escalating, most of the money going in the ground at first. The notion there, the logic there, is that you spend that money in the ground, gives you the confidence to make those bigger cash payments. The underlying owner can say, okay, at least a bunch of work's going to happen on my project, and then I'll get paid on the end. And then, of course, then you have the NSRs and so forth. So why wouldn't I let them lapse? Because there's no way on earth I would ever let a Margarita lapse or a Santa Cecilia. Andrea, on the other hand, seeing as we haven't put a drill hole in it yet, if we come up against payments on that, for instance, this year, and I have to dilute the company at 20 cents to make a payment on Andrea, I would consider letting that one drop. But there's no way on earth I'll let the Santa Cecilia and a Margarita drop, because they're both got an opportunity to be have a dramatic impact on our market capitalization.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I agree. I like what I'm seeing there. What would it take for you though to let one of those two go? Like, what do you? It could have
I'd
happened
sell it.
this year. What's that?
By let it go, I would sell it.
Oh, okay. So you'd sell
Yeah,
the option
that's
with
my
the
version
remaining.
of letting go.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, what would that look
that's
like? Let's say I come to you tomorrow and I say, Sean, I want to have my own company. As I said, I like what Margarita is looking like. I want to go, chase elephants. What do you want from me?
well, presumably you would be a major mining company and you could buy it for me off for a premium.
Hmm.
And that is our exit strategy. I mean, Torq Resources is an exploration company. We have no plans whatsoever of ever building a mine on any of these projects. Our exit for ourselves and for our shareholders is a transaction with another mining company, a big mining company. I think Margarita is going to be something that would really fit the profile for a mid-tier,
Hmm.
and there are some mid-tiers in the area. Um, that I think would be accretive for. It would affect their bottom line in a positive manner. And then, of course, Santa Cecilia, that's a major mining company project. Santa Cecilia turns out to be what it looks like. They're talking about, billions of dollars of CapEx that will be required to put something like that into production. So it's going to take a big company or a consortium thereof. And you can see that sort of taking form up at Santa Cecilia. You've already got Barrick and Newmont surrounding us. Now you got Goldfields, owning 15% of us so far. Who knows what they may do in the future. But that's lined up nicely. It's one of the reasons we love Chile and these belts. All the major there's plenty of suitors active, being successfully active on all those belts.
Hmm.
Fantastic.
Right. How far up the process do you think you're going to have to take each one of these projects to become attractive, respectively, to a mid-tier or to a major?
Yeah, well, I can tell you we've got a number of CAs signed on both projects, and both projects are being and have been reviewed by other mining companies. In fact, when we first announced Santa Cecilia, we had them all over us. A little bit about the story of Santa Cecilia. The underlying owner, Mario Hernandez, who has been responsible for a number of discoveries, major discoveries in Chile. And so he's very, very successful. He doesn't, you know, need to sell these things. His bills are all taken care of for probably 10 lifetimes. And so he really, what he wanted to do was get this project in the hands of a junior, because they know that our lifeblood is drilling. He wants it to get drilled. He had done deals with majors in the past, and then they sit on it and they do it on their own little time. There's no incentive for a major to move an earlier stage exploration project forward with priority, because it's not a priority. It makes sense. But for us, it's everything. These projects, generating news from it, drilling holes. That's how we raise our capital. We don't have earnings from 6 other mines that we can use to fund this stuff. It's our story and the progress that we're making on these particular assets that will allow us to continue doing so.
Hmm.
So we had a good meeting of the minds about how this would unfold. I can tell you a number of companies tried to acquire Santa Cecilia prior to us, and they all failed. And it was actually through Waldo Quadra, our country manager, who's a very, very well-known and prominent Chilean mining entrepreneur and businessman. He had the relationships that actually got that door open. We knew about Santa Cecilia before we had combined with Waldo and his team, but he wasn't answering our calls. So we acquired Margarita first as a country entry. One of the things that's important in junior mining is to sort of dip your toe in a water before you dive head first. So we took Margarita, and we made a discovery on it. So back to your original question, which one would I let go of? To be honest with you, our strategy was we were realistic people, and we knew that Margarita looked interesting. There was metal all over it, but we had no way of knowing that we would have the success that we've had on it. So I was thinking we get in, do Margarita, it would be okay, pretty good. It would allow us to build credibility in the country, allow us to make the Santa Cecilia acquisition, which that's what played out. But then with the added bonus, we made a significant discovery at Margarita, and in 3 drill programs now, the first drill program, we made the discovery that you mentioned in your preamble. And then the second drill program, we expanded on that to the 800 meters. And then this last drill program, we made 2 other discoveries on the project, and we don't think the project's done giving yet. So no, we're kind of excited about it. But what it does though, when your market cap is not increasing as a result of these things, because we're in this sort of disjointed market like we're in right now, the funding of it becomes onerous. And when you can't underwrite, continue to fund the project at higher levels each time, I don't want to dilute my original shareholders out of existence,
Totally.
That's one of the challenges there.
Well, that is the challenge basically in junior mining. So I do get it. I want to talk about Margarita as we move forward, but let's first talk about the plans for 2024, about the very next step. So you say you're kicking it off with drilling at Cecilia. I assume you have what, about $6 million left in the bank right now. How much of that?
5.3.
5.3. Okay, so how much of
5.
that is going to be spent on Cecilia?
Yeah, about a couple $1 million Canadian. So
to start with, because I mean you have to spend 4.5 this year, as far as I understand the option, right?
No, we're a bit ahead of the curve of that. We'll more than meet our expenditure requirements on it. That number you took out of the table, we were already ahead of that last year. So we will be fully up with our option agreement after this 1,500 to 2,000 meters, whatever the weather will allow us to complete here up in Chile on this round. But really, that exposes, this whole topic exposes the problem that we're having at Santa Cecilia with the company and this disconnect in the market. When you look at the Santa Cecilia project, it's such a big project, but it's a cash hungry project. In order to move it forward in a meaningful manner, you need a lot of capital. Well, I have raised hundreds of millions of dollars over the years of doing this stuff, but not at 20 cents. I need a higher share price to be able to do that. For all sorts of reasons. And so you've seen us do, if you look back at the history over the last year and a half, 2 years, you see these little $5 million. I haven't done a $5 million financing in a long time. It's crazy to be. So it's kind of like we're elephant hunting with a BB gun right now, and we need a bazooka. If you're using that as an analogy for you're not going to take down an elephant with the BB gun. You're just going to piss it off. And we need a bazooka to go out there and do it. And that's really where a lot of our energy is going in right now, is to trying to find a way to get out of this spiral of these mini financings at lower prices. There's just got to be a way out of that. And is that doing an asset level deal with a major on it? Is that doing something creative? We don't know, but certainly we can't go on doing these little financings that dilute the bejesus out of the company.
Well, what do you think of some of these deals that we've seen emerging these last couple of I won't say months, but we can even call it years, where you have a major come in, you do a JV, they basically fully fund your exploration program. You don't have to raise money, but you sell them like 75% of the upside. Is that something that interests you?
Yeah, well, look, historically, absolutely not. I like to bring them in the end and really make them pay the big number. And I've done that several times in my career. I've been part of companies that have done that several times in my career. So, but in this current environment, I'll have to say, like, I've had a long, successful career, and this is a challenge. This is probably the most challenging environment I've found myself in 35 years of doing this. And there've been a few challenging environments. We had after Bre-X, well, that was not fun, and we had the 2008 crash, and then we had then that recovered quite quickly. But then we had the whole metals market fell off a cliff in 2012 again. And I remember the autumn of 2012. I think it was 2012, and it was very difficult. I had a stock that was trading at $9.50. It was down to like $3 in like a week when gold came off this amazing, and nothing changed with the company. None of the fundamentals changed with the company. It was just the environment changed. And for Torq, we were fortunate enough to sell a company in 2015, Acaden Resources, another one of its sister company to it. We sold a project to Agnico for a couple $100 million. And it was not a big takeover, but at least it was enough to sort of to lubricate our machine and allow us to cash up Torq. We put $20 million of our own money into it back then, about approximately, and allowed us to go and seek these assets, because it took years to acquire these assets. You have to realize too, these assets now, they're just so few and far between. These meaningful assets. I'm talking about the Santa Cecilia. Margarita is great and everything, but it's a mid-tier asset. It's not going to throw up hundreds of thousands of ounces of gold. You're in billions of pounds of copper. That's going to happen at Santa Cecilia. And that's the kind of project that gets the $1 billion market cap for a junior and more. And that's the kind of thing that interests me professionally.
Interesting. I've taken a large interest in IOCGs. That's why Margarita interests me, because I know that there could be unexpected potentials. They're strange beasts at times that can surprise you.
I think there's almost no two alike. In fact, one of the things that has us really scratching our head at Margarita, and I'm sure since you're a follower of IOCGs, when you looked at Margarita, did it not strike you this gold grade? It's just so not normal for an IOCG to have the kind of gold that we have at Margarita. We actually joke about it in house here. We call it an IOGC.
Well, they changed the name actually. They like I believe in the I'm not a geologist, but in the geology books that I've seen, they recently changed maybe I can look it up, name change. They changed the name in the books. It's no longer an IOCG, they call it something else. Because it's I mean, this is iron oxide, copper, gold, but it's not most of the times it's not only that. Like sometimes you have rare earths in there, you could have cobalt in there. It could be any number of things basically.
There's lots going on in those things.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot going on.
But on Cecilia, how are you staying in the same depth of 500 to about a kilometer deep?
Well, for one, we have 4 drill holes in that whole immense project. We have uncovered since when we acquired it, the underlying owner had what we predicated the acquisition on was there was 2 drill holes in it. One of them was 900 and some meters at about half a 4.5 or whatever it was, a copper equivalent. And so that was interesting to us, A, because of the scale, B, because you could spit on Caspice from there. And then the other, Sarikasali is about 10 clicks away or 12 clicks away or something along those lines over a mountain range. So we see real operational synergies for, say, for Caspice. And then as we got to know the rocks better, or the scientists had time to spend with it, relog all that core and that existed, and then we drilled our own 2 holes. We're seeing, and what's really, really exciting about that last program, these porphyry deposits, they all have what's called an intrusion. So the big intrusion comes up, right? And that's the primary fuel, what fuels the mineralization of the whole thing. So that's where your best grade is going to be generally. That's the nature of that intrusion is what's going to dictate how big the pit is. What they call it wall rock, and that's all we've drilled so far is wall rock. We still haven't drilled into that causative intrusion, that event that came up and blasted all this rock. And so what's interesting, so the hole that we acquired the project on, and then the one that was about 700 meters away, we're seeing because the evolution of getting closer to that causative intrusion. We know we're close to it because the gold grade went up. And then it's not just empirical findings, in other words, data from samples. We have geological observations. So stuff like alteration changes. The type of copper mineralization that you're encountering changes, and we're seeing all those changes. Thank goodness, hundreds of meters away, we have Caspice, which was same age rocks, same event. To think it would be any different because some man made a claim boundary between the two. Nature had nothing to do with that. These were the same geological events. And so at Caspice, you see, as they go to their causative intrusion, you see almost the identical transition from that wall rock into where so that's what excites us about this next project, that a very real chance. Once we tag into that cause of intrusion, forget about it. That's when it gets really exciting. But the good news is, unlike a lot of deposits styles, where you get some pretty bad surprises sometimes, or some good ones, it goes both ways. But with porphyries, there is always going to be a causative intrusion. Like there is we know it's there, so it's not like we're hunting for something we're never going to find, because it has to be there. Otherwise, all the rest of the stuff wouldn't be here. It's that simple.
Do moly grades have to pick up in the hanging wall as you're coming closer to that causative intrusion, or how does that work?
I haven't put it, to be perfectly straight with you. I mean, I'm aware of the moly credit. I've worked on these porphyries all over the world, and moly has been significant in about one of them. It's always there as a little credit. So with 4 drill holes, I haven't spent a whole lot of time on the mineralogy, and we need a lot more data before I can start to speak intelligently about that. I'd just be speculating and it'd be silly.
What are you paying per meter there? Because you said 1,500, 2,000 meter.
That's about $1,000 Canadian
okay, so,
per meter. That's all in.
Okay.
But the smaller the program, the higher the price per meter, right? Because your camp costs, your fixed costs are the same. So it really behooves you to, and that's why it's so frustrating to do these smaller financing. I want to raise $50 million, put 4 drills on Santa Cecilia, and then pound that thing over a short period of time, because all those fixed costs, then I can pack up the tent when we're not working there, and and then you can have savings. But right now it's sort of like these, like I said, it's a BB gun at an elephant.
But it's again about 3 to 4 holes is what you're going for this year. One drill.
That's what we are resigning ourselves to be able to do. It's certainly not what, if given a perfect world, which we'll never have, but a little more perfect world than we have now, then we'd be doing a much more substantial program.
Right. And it's all targeted around figuring out where that causative intrusion is.
Trying to find it. Absolutely. And then that's on the one porphyry center. So when we acquired the project, the underlying owner, because he's wealthy and because he's not a public company, doesn't have to answer for people, he just said, I'm going to go drill a couple holes. He didn't do mapping, soils, all the geophysics. He did some geophysics, but he actually did it after he drilled the holes just to see if it correlated. Usually you do it for it, but it doesn't matter. I don't judge him for it. He just paid for it himself. So whatever. Yeah, if I didn't, but it's illogical from a science perspective, particularly when you have to report and so on and so forth. But when you're a billionaire, you can do what you want with your money.
It's a boss move, yeah.
So we went back and redid all that work, that disciplined work, the samples, the mapping, the geological mapping, the geophysics, et cetera, before we drilled. And so that's why we've got like 6 porphyry targets. You'll see there's a figure in our presentation that shows out all the we discovered all those. The other thing that wasn't known about Santa Cecilia prior to us going there for this very reason was that no extensive mapping had been done, and nobody knew that some of these porphyries daylight. In other words, mineralized porphyry mineralization right to surface. You can rock chip it. We getting grades like 1% copper some places, a gram gold some places. So there's a lot of reasons to be super excited about Santa Cecilia. I am probably one of the best projects I've ever worked on, and I worked on some good ones.
Let's see, where because you have it on your presentation indeed on Santa Cecilia, where you think the causative intrusion might be.
No, we would never do that.
Oh, because
we can tell you the direction we think it's trending in. It's actually pretty obvious, but we do actually have like a cartoon pipe there that says cause of intrusion with I think it has got a question mark on it.
Yeah.
It's just, it'll be where it is. It's definitely going to be in that direction though, because all the geochemistry tells us that, like all of that alteration, all the mineralogy, the way that it's being deposited. Look, the nice thing about porphyries is they're not super complicated compared to some other deposit styles, like an IOCG, as we were talking about before. Not a lot of surprises in a porphyry. You just chase where the grade is. And what can really make a porphyry too is geometry. So in other words, if it's buried deep, it costs the same amount of money to move a ton of ore as a ton of waste, but you don't get paid on the ton of waste. So you want your strip ratio to be this is just obvious. You want to be handling rock that has money in it. Forget about the name of the metals. How much money is in that rock? And you want to be touching stuff that doesn't have money in it as little as possible, and touching stuff that does have money as much as possible to really simplify it.
Sure, that sounds like a recipe for a good night in the club too. That aside, though, what are you thinking about? When are you thinking assay results are going to be coming back?
Yeah, again, it's we're just using the old 8-week rule of thumb right now, which is a modern phenomena that's baffling, even because the labs aren't even as busy as they are during the heydays, and they're still taking forever to turn them around. So that's the reality we've been dealing with here over the last couple of years. If you want to do your sampling with a proper QA/QC and standards and so on and so forth, with a rigorous, check and balance system on your assays, because at the end of the day, like I was mentioned before, we're not a mining company. We live and die on these assay results. They really are directly attached to our integrity and people's belief in our ability to be proper scientists. So we take that very seriously.
But are you drilling 2 shifts? And I mean, how many meters are you drilling a day?
Well, it varies to how deep you are, how hard the rock is then. Are you into a fault? Are you, so I think the average on the last one was, I don't know, call it 30 or 40 meters a shift. And we were running 2 shifts.
Okay.
Maybe not 24 hours. I think maybe there's like an hour of dead time as each shift change.
So going to take you about a month to complete the drill program once you started.
Yeah, take a month and a half.
Okay.
You know, maybe something breaks down and you lose a few days. That always happens, right? It's just it's part of the game.
When is that? When is it? Has it started as we speak?
It has not, but
Okay.
we have mobilized people. I couldn't sign a drill contractor, send people up there till I completed that financing. It would be
Right.
not good fiduciary duty to make obligations with capital I do not have.
Okay. But so you will basically assay results. If I say the end of April, that they should be here.
Yeah, I'd say April, May for
Okay.
sure.
April,
You know,
May.
things I'm very cautious about trying to promise people timing things because every time I commit to a timing, something will happen it almost never happens sooner, that's for sure.
Right.
Things just seem to move slowly these days.
So by then, you're gonna have 4 months of the year behind you. If you're spending about $500,000 in G&E, that's 2 million on G&E, 2 million on the project. You're gonna be left with 1.3 million. Where does that 1.3 million go after
Well, our
we?
G&A, well, we have some property payments as well. So our
Okay.
G&A is going to be coming down significantly from what you're, in fact, we're getting rid of our office space here in Vancouver. There's no point in it. We've made serious cuts. I cut $600,000 out of the marketing budget this year. And these are just examples. But the good news is I can just turn that back on anytime I want. Right now, what's the point of marketing to a market that doesn't care, that's not listening? When we drill, we market. And what I've done away with is these sort of recurring charges for the company. So, you sign up for these and you pay someone X a month to highlight your company. No, I will pay them on a sort of a la carte basis from now on. So, look, we've had a long, successful career as a group, and I've got good relationships with all the people that do these sort of things. And, that stuff really adds up. And I don't mind paying for marketing. I absolutely don't. In fact, I think we owe it to our shareholders. If you're out there drilling, you got to pay for marketing at the same time. But if I'm drilling 1,500, 2,000 meters at Santa Cecilia, the marketing should not overshadow that. And it also messes with a ratio that I've always been quite proud of, and we're just having a hard time hitting. Again, this is due to not raising enough. It's not that we're spending too much money on G&A. We're spending not enough money drilling. So that money in the ground ratio ends up being in a place where I'm not proud of it. I mean, we always were able to get 80, 85, 90% sometimes of our money into the ground. That's where we deliver value. And we don't take big salaries. If our comp, we're definitely in the 60 to 70% percentile if you do a big comp, and we hire a third party to do a big comparative a review of what we pay ourselves. And I don't determine what I pay myself. We have independent directors that do that, so we have good corporate governance.
Well, how much are you targeting in G&E this year?
Yeah, I think I can get it down to like $260,000 a month.
Okay. Well, that's a big slash relative to last, so about half basically.
Yeah, but it takes time to do that. And also, unfortunately, when you have a number of salaried people that you're going to convert to contractors, you have to pay out their contracts and so forth. But anyway, these are the boring detail stuff. These are all things that we're working at, though. We're working extremely hard to look. There's two ways to stop the dilution. One is to spend less, right? Then I don't have to replace those dollars at 20 cents, and right. So, we're just taking a very very sharp look at everything we're doing. Everything.
And the other way is to get your share price up, right? To fight against the dilution.
But that requires, yes.
So what the plan basically is, come out with the assay results. Hopefully they're good. Hopefully share price is higher, and then do a raise on the back of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be if the timing works for that, or if the market improved in the meantime. And we're always out marketing, talking to institutional investors, retail investors, high net worth, family offices, that sort of thing. Every once in a while, you'll get someone who will say, "Hey, I really like this. Why don't you do a financing now?" And you have to be pretty much a complete idiot nowadays if someone who you like and you want as a shareholder says something like that, to not take the money.
Sure.
Out of arrogance or ego or whatever other silly reason one might have for saying no to money right now.
It happens a whole lot more than I would have liked to
Yeah.
believe before I came into the space a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
But
We're
yeah.
not in an environment where you can say no to money right now.
Yeah. Do you think raising money will be easier in the latter part of the year? Like gut feeling, of course. So it's nothing that you can hang your hat on because I mean you already have to amend that private placement price last time, which
Yeah,
must
I
not
did.
have felt nice. So
First time in my 35 years ever.
yeah. Well, so
Adjust the
how do you
sentence.
think how and who do you think you'll be raising money with in the later part?
Well, one of the things that worked against us was that the share price fell and our market cap fell below. So there's some really good quality institutions with whom I've raised significant capital over the last many, many years. And they were interested in playing, but they've got mandates at there. So for instance, if you're sub $50 million market cap, they can't invest in you. And since I've spent most of my career with put it this way, Torq had a $50 million market cap when it was a shell, when we had no assets in it. And we just had the, 18 million bucks in it that we had. I think we had a 50, $60 million market cap back in those days. And so the irony of that is crazy. So when we had nothing, the company was worth more. Now that we've got some of the best projects that I've had the good fortune to work on, we have a lower market cap. So that's working against us. So again, the solution is get the market cap up, get the share price up. And so we're trying to find ways to do that.
But then again, going back to the same question, like is there someone in your Rolodex right now, management board, Goldfield, someone else who you can just go to and say like, hey, I need 5 more million bucks to put into Margarita or whatever it might be.
Yeah, we could do that. We
Okay.
can do that.
Okay.
I mean, again, I've raised hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars for this stuff. It's just right now, it's just really difficult. The risk off. You got to look at the position, say, of a fund manager right now. I mean, they're not going to risk their position in that fund to take the risk on a junior in this environment. They're just not doing it. And
Right.
so, there's a time to push people like that, and this is not it.
Okay, so if/when you raise that money, you're off to Margarita in the later part of the summer. What are we talking about there? Where in the property are you drilling?
Well, we'll have a news release soon showing some of the new targets. Obviously,
Okay.
we've had those 2 new discoveries. We'll definitely be because those don't have any girth to them right now. In other words, they're discoveries, but they need to be defined. So I think what you would see us doing, we got a couple more targets we want to test. So there'd be a little bit of sort of more, I'll call it wildcat drilling, trying to find another new discovery on the project. But we've got 3 discoveries right now. So the primary focus would be to drill off and define the size of those 3 existing discoveries. That's where, once you can hit a critical mass there, and then that's when a mid-tier mining company is going to go, okay, we don't want, this little junior to own this anymore. We're going to buy it from them.
How, again, potentially the same question as I asked you at the beginning, but how far away is that? I mean, let's say you put in a couple of holes in there. They're not as deep on Margarita, but let's say you put in, I don't know what you want to put, like 5 or 10 holes, whatever. Is that enough to get someone interested, or is that like 3 years
Well,
down the
people are
road?
already interested. So to get them to act is what we're trying to
Yeah,
do.
to
We've
get them
already
to
got
act. That's what I mean. Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
you have to ask them, was what my cheeky response to that, but I'll speculate. I think we need another 10 to 15,000 meters of drilling before we could get ourselves to a place. You got to have enough drilling there where you don't need a 43-101able resource. The mid-tier company, they don't care about that. They'll do it on their own back of their own envelope, but particularly companies that are working in the area and understand the deposit, understand the geology, understand the inputs, understand the costs. I mean, one of the lovely things about Margarita, if I was a mid-tier company, that I would like about it is that it's paved roads right up almost to it, power lines you can see from it, 1,200-meter elevation, you can work all year round. It's just an easy place to be, and this is mine after mine along that trend. So there's no environmental concerns. Extra environmental concerns. You still have to do all the right things environmentally, but that we would do that in any event.
It's cheaper drilling though, right? Because it's not as deep.
Very much. I mean, we had super cheap drilling so far because we've only, as you mentioned earlier, we did RC. The reason we did RC was, it's all about giving yourself the best chance to make the discovery. You can make discoveries with RC, but you're going to need the core drill for that engineering. So when you're starting to put together a mining scenario, you definitely want the core for the structural information, for the geotechnical information, and the other things that you can get from the core. But pounding out those chips right now, you don't use water. It's, there's all sorts of benefits to going RC. That's not available, say, at a Santa Cecilia at, 3,800 meters, 4,000 meters, those air compressors don't work so well. So and besides, you really want that, the geological information on that porphyry, at least initially.
How tall again how high up is Margarita?
Well, Margarita is about 1,200 meters, 1,200 meters.
Okay, so that's right. So what are you paying?
So it's nothing.
$500 a meter ish.
Yeah, I think it was 400 and some was our last program came in. Okay. All in. Yeah.
Right.
It's a good half of what it is up at Santa Cecilia, maybe better than half, 40% of what it is.
Okay. So following the option agreement, how much money will you have to spend on it this year to keep it in good standing?
Oh no, we don't have to spend another dime, except we're way ahead of the game. I don't think we have to spend all we have to do on Margarita now is make payments. I don't think we is make payments.
Yeah, that's what I made out of because there's no table on it, but I thought maybe it was missing or something. Okay, so you can basically just spend as much as you like. There's no pressure on you putting like $2 million or whatever in it.
Right. We don't have any spend or lose sort of scenario happening with, that kind of a gun to our head.
But what do you want to spend on it, ideally?
Well, I would want to put 10, 15,000 meters, and $10 million would get me the answer I want on Margarita. But
sure,
I'm not going to, unless the market changes, I'm not going to dilute this company for $10 million at 20 cents to go see Margarita. I can sit on it for a year. I got no reason the metal's not going anywhere, right? I'm not going to destroy the capital structure of the company to get the answer. We'll get the answer next year. We know we want the answer. Right now, I would use, fund Margarita just to keep it whole for a better day. But who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Things improve. We raise the money. We go. That's the nice thing about Margarita, though. We don't have to try and time it around seasons the way we do at Santa Cecilia. Margarita, if things improve, we go do a raise money, have the drills there the week later. I'm maybe not quite that quickly, but quickly.
Sure. So, well, that's what I was thinking about, is that you don't necessarily have to do it in one drill program, right? The 10
no, but ideally you would.
Of course, yeah,
I'd go with a core rig and an RC rig. One core rig to do the definition drilling on the already known discoveries, and I would use RC to continue to do that sort of raw exploration for new because really you're just looking for metal, right?
Yeah, I agree. No, that's a good approach. But so drilling Margarita is kind of on the margin right now. It's all market and results dependent, because that would potentially push up your stock price, basically.
It could. I mean, we've made 3 discoveries on it so far that all it did was make the stock price go down. So
it's true.
When people start to care about this sort of, and I've been through this for a long time, and it makes no sense. And then something happens, or a couple things happen. But generally what we have to see here is the major mining companies start doing a lot better, and the mid tiers share prices, and then it trickles down to us, to the risk.
Good. Understood. Well, got it. I think I'm getting a much better perspective of what's happening. What am I forgetting to ask? What should I be asking you that I'm not?
Oh, I mean, we haven't really talked about Chile and why I love that so much, but I presume we wouldn't be sitting here talking at all if you didn't like it. So,
Sure.
Chile is such a fantastic place to work. I just can't go on enough of it. I've been fortunate enough to have worked in a lot of different jurisdictions over my many years doing this, and always wanted to get into Chile, but it's a difficult place to get into. That's probably why it's still good. Any place that you can get into easy usually gets trashed before too long. Use the airport lounges as an example. It used to be an exclusive thing to do. Chile's remained an exclusive place to be, and really the people that operate there operate at a really high level of technical and social accountability and so forth. And we take a lot of pride with ourselves for having that kind of a perspective on how we do things. Unfortunately, our space, this junior mining market, is so full of fools that it often rubs the sort of serious people the wrong way. Now, there's lots of really good serious people, but it's very difficult, for instance, for just a retail investor who doesn't necessarily have a background in mining and so forth to tell the difference right away. And it's a real disservice to us. So that's one of the things I do like about these very, very bad times. It's sort of, if you don't know what you're doing, you're not going to last long right now.
Well, look, it's kind of the fact they said this is one of the most or the most challenging portion of your career so far is also kind of encouraging me because this is sort of where I'm getting my start in the space, just with my own money, and that's not done well at all so far. But it's
No,
encouraging to me that you're basically saying there's better days ahead, and it's not always going to be that way. Um,
absolutely.
yeah. What do
Yeah.
Chile's got a general election coming up in 2025, if I'm not mistaken, to elect a new president, potentially a new president. What are
Yeah.
you thinking? Is it gonna stay a stable jurisdiction with that election on upcoming?
Absolutely. Well, it stayed a stable jurisdiction throughout a referendum on on the Constitution of the country.
Yeah.
Imagine what would happen, say, in the United States of America if they had a referendum on their Constitution right now. I mean, they're already shooting each other at ridiculous rates down there. If
Mhm.
you had something as fundamental as that, how polarized that country is. So Chile's not a polarized country. You do have uh, you know, you have that typical thing that you find in countries like that where you have a small percentage of the population holding a lot of the wealth and some people that are less fortunate. But what you're seeing in Chile is they do have a pretty solid middle class, and they're um, you know they're kind people. They're not violent people, is what I'm saying. I was always blown away when I go down there, just how warm and engaging the people are. When they did do their referendum, there's 15 different regions in Chile. Everybody voted. There wasn't one act of violence during it. There was nobody acting out. No sort of internal terrorism type of things, like people bombing or doing silly things like that. You often see these things, burning cars or whatever the case may be. They said no to the real sort of left-leaning agenda that the president brought in, and then it's bringing. It was a very traditionally a very conservative country, tried to get pulled to the left, but what that all that's left pulling is doing is taking the right to the middle a little bit. And,
Hmm.
I'm not super comfortable using terms like left, right, and middle, but that's just I think that's what people will understand best.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
Chile, like many countries, is getting a more of a social conscience, and I think that should be embraced by everyone.
Hmm.
Certainly, that's the way we are conducting ourselves as visitors in their country.
Yeah. It absolutely could be a good thing. I don't think anybody's arguing that. Whether that's
Yeah,
always the case in reality is a different question, especially looking at what's happening in some of the Western countries. But yeah, I mean, as I told you, I'm in Belgium right now, and we spend 650 652 days, I believe, without government once because we just couldn't agree on a government. So stuff like
yeah.
that happen even in the West. So no, good points on Chile. That's crossed off my list too. Yeah, I don't think I have any other questions left. Anything else that you want to add here?
No, I just think like I like what you said was you're just coming into the space newer, and I think
Hmm.
I envy people that are just coming into it right now. If they've got capital, this is a fantastic place. You're not going to make it overnight. But here's one thing I do know: metals are becoming more scarce, and the mines that are everyday mines are puking out metal. It's getting consumed, and there is not nearly enough new metal being discovered to replace the mines depletion globally. So that's just basic supply and demand. And if you want to take the green perspective on it, copper makes sense. If you want to just talk about industrial building up in developing countries, copper is going to be consumed. Technology, gold's gold. It's got an emotional attachment to people. Some people think it's currency. Some people like jewelry. To me, that's less of a solid economic bear weather. It's got more like an emotional, almost religious attachment to it. Like gold and silver have people love it or get religious about it almost. But these are assets that aren't going anywhere. It's not some new coin, some digital currency that may or may not exist tomorrow. That's makes money laundering easier and all these other sort of things. I think digital currencies might make sense, but you can't have 15 of them. It seems bizarre to me that has actually taken a lot of the attention away from, I think,
Hmm.
distracted particularly the younger generation of how they can hedge against the US dollar and other of the currencies, which, let's face it, through the pandemic got the living heck printed out of them. And they're pretty frightening as well.
Hmm. It definitely is an interesting time in the market, but maybe
Yeah.
good to get your start in to learn investing in a hard market is maybe better than getting in the best market and thinking you're a genius and then making a good nut and then losing all of that basically. So
I've watched that movie many times. I've seen that happen. So many people, they come in a good market, everything you buy, you make money on. So you start thinking you're smart. But and not that you're not smart. You think you're wise because but you have no experience. You don't understand what the other side of this business looks like. Starting where you are, you need to get that wisdom now to make the right decisions. You have to make sure you go with management teams that have done it before. Um, you know, all that sort of thing. I wouldn't touch somebody personally with my own capital, which I also do invest. I don't invest in people that have never done it before. I'll pay more for them next time when they have a little bit of a premium because they've got a bit of a track record.
it's a good way of looking at it. Well, good. I appreciate the advice here as well, Sean. So yeah, thank you so much for sitting down with me. I'm gonna be here if you want to do another call or another interview. So, but yeah, thank you so much for investing your time with me.
Oh, sure, be great.
All right, moving on. And last for today is Outcrop Silver. It's actually Outcrop Silver and Gold now, and this is a good guess says that it's a silver and gold exploration company with 4 assets in Colombia. The company is listed on the TSX Ventures Exchange under the ticker symbol OCG, where an average of about 200,000 shares trade each day, with a 52-week high of 41 cents and a 52-week low of about 11 cents. With a market cap of 38 million Canadian dollars and about 255 million shares outstanding today, this is a 15-cent stock. Again, not surprising, another stock that shows you the state of the market trading at close to 52-week lows. There are about 96 million warrants and 24 million options, resulting in about 370 million fully diluted shares. Management and directors own 12% of the company, and Eric Sprott, so the man, not Sprott Institution, so Eric Sprott owns about 14% of those shares as well. As of the last financial statement, which is dated August 31, which also happens to coincide with the company's fiscal year, the company had about $3.5 million in current assets, most of which was in actual cash and some prepaid expenses next to that. That sat on the balance sheet against current liabilities of about $500,000, most of which made up by account payables and a small portion of a near-term lease liability. But there is no long-term debt on this balance sheet. As it always is, though, you want to go to setterplus.ca to see the most up-to-date financial data yourself, because after the statement was published, the company's obviously been active. They've also opened an ATM facility, which allows them to sell shares from time to time into the open market, and that is worth about $5 million. Outcrop's fiscal year, as I said, ends on August 31, and during that was fiscal 2023, they had spent nearly $9.5 million in total, about 57% of which went into actual exploration activities, which means that, again, over the last fiscal year, the company spent about $250,000 a month on G&A, and that's, of course, if we subtract the share-based compensation. But numbers aside, as I said, the company does have 4 projects in total. They're all in Colombia, but there's really only one that counts here. There's really only one that is advanced enough to be of note, and that's the one that is going to get the most attention today. And that's the Santa Ana project. It lies southeast from the capital of Bogota, and it's a 100% owned, narrow, high-grade, primarily silver epithermal veins project. That covers almost 28,000 hectares, situated in one of the highest grade silver districts in Latin America, and definitely in Colombia. And that's, of course, the Mariquita district, which is mostly characterized by, again, epithermal precious metals veins. So this is your typical Colombian structure of sort of narrow veins, but high grade. And Outcrop has got 6 map veins, vein zones, not 6 map veins, vein zones, across a 30 by 12 kilometer piece of land, resulting in a total cumulative vein zone of over 60 kilometer. But after a recent field program, they believe there's more in there. So that's also something we're going to be talking about here. After drilling over 330 holes here, Outcrop has defined an MRE within 7 of those mineralized veins. And yes, now we are talking about actual veins. So 7 of those veins, and I believe they have 22 veins that are sampled in total. 7 of those were included in this MRE, suggesting again that there could be room for growth of the resource here. The MRE that I'm referencing that shows over 24 million ounces of silver, contained silver equivalent, that is in the indicated category. We don't love equivalents, but this is over 70% of the metal is actually silver. So I guess I'll allow the EQ conversion here. And then there's another 13.5 million ounces of silver equivalent, again, the majority of which is actual silver in the inferred category. So in total, we're talking about 37.5 million ounces of contained metal in here. And this is the first MRE that the company is doing. They're hoping, of course, to grow that. It's also, as I said, narrow veins, but high grade. And when I say high grade, this is at an average. So the grades here, average grades are 614 grams of silver equivalent per ton in the indicated, and they're 435 grams per ton of AgEq in the inferred category, which actually makes it one of the highest grade undeveloped silver deposits out there in the world. In terms of silver alone, it's actually even higher than Mag Silver's Juanes Appeal. In terms of metallurgy, recent flotation tests are showing good recovery. So we're talking about 93% recovery for silver, 97% recovery for gold. Arsenic levels were also tested for and reported. They're sitting at, they are surpassing 0.4% there, which the company says is acceptable, but I do hope that's also something else we can talk about further on in the conversation. More metallurgical testing in 2024 as well is coming, as far as I understand it. So again, not unexpected. Outcrop says that 2024 will be all about trying to grow this MRE, as the vast majority of what is really, well, the center really of a historically very important precious metals mining district for Latin America and maybe potentially globally, depending on what time frame you want to go back into the future in, is well, the saying is that it's still underexplored, basically. Again, there's 3 more projects. All 3 are 100% owned. All 3 much earlier on the Lassonde curve than Santa Ana. All 3 are epithermal vein systems. 2 of those are intermediates. But again, not necessarily the company's focus right now, so I'm not going to spend too much time on them. And generally looking at how Outcrop has developed over the last, let's say, a year or 2 years from very early stage exploration on Santa Ana to now an MRE and potentially more soon. It's also interesting to see that they've changed their CEO. And so, Ian, now it's on to you. You're now the new CEO. You're a mining engineer by background, as far as I understand it, and your predecessor was an exploration geologist. He's the gentleman basically who ran the team that made this discovery. And this might be a good point to sort of start the conversation, because switching from an explorationist leading the company to, call it a mine builder now, might be suggesting that Outcrop, again, might be trying to build its own mine instead of driving Santa Ana to, let's say, a PEA and then selling it. Is that the case? Like, do you want to build, or do you want to sell?
So wonderful introduction, by the way. So I appreciate that greatly, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. I am a mining engineer, and I've got about 25 years, a little over 25 years working in the industry, and 15 of those years are in South America. So I enjoy working and living in South America. I was previously Senior VP of Corriente Resources and took the Mirador project all the way through feasibility sale and the start of construction. So you would wonder, hey, is the mining engineer showing up to build a mine? I think the correct answer is I'm here because I believe that Santa Ana one day can be a mine. And obviously, there's a lot of work between an initial resource estimate and getting it to the phase to be able to de-risk it properly and put a project together. And that's really what my forte is. So Joe, who's still a director, did an amazing job coming up with the methodology of how do you create a target to discovery, and a discovery to create resources, and started with these first a very cluster. They're very close to each other, 7 veins, but mapping out, additional 22 targets, and that's still growing. So now it's about, obviously, the number one focus of the company is continuing to demonstrate a pathway to a much larger resource. but also taking into all the other factors to think about what would this look like as a future mine. And I have a saying. I giggle to myself a little bit when I hear the pitch, and they said, "Well, our goal is to get it to X size, and then we're going to spin it. We're going to sell it off, right?" And because juniors don't pick when they sell, right? Market picks when they sell, and the majors pick when they want to buy. And so majors want to buy projects that can become future mines. And I'm in Vancouver right now. I'm up here for the week, heading back to Colombia today, and this is a part of a conversation that goes on all the time, right? You see projects with no end game. There's no way that they could possibly be a future mine, and that is the purpose of the work that we do today. And people do not buy projects if they think they can't become mines, and that's the goal. And so it's de-risking a project and demonstrating it has a pathway into future production, and lowering that increasing that possibility over time. So that is also a big part of the work and what's going on. I like how you mentioned the amount of money that we put into the ground. Me living in South America, we're watching every single cent right now to maximize that the money goes into the ground, and making sure to have a team that makes that sustainable. So right now, the focus is, okay, we have a resource. We've proven how this holds together. There's a possibility here. We can go into more detail on that, but also to be looking and thinking of taking the steps that are necessary to prove to market that this can become one of the more important primary silver mines in the world.
Let's talk about how you do that in terms of steps. Is there a pathway from here directly to a PEA, or do you go to an updated MRE where you do an M&I resource and then move to PEA from then on? What do you think?
So I'm going to tell you first, this is what I think today. And the important part is to understand we have a group of professionals that are constantly thinking about these kind of things. So it's more like steering a very large ship. First, the number one focus is increasing the resource. We already have a very high number in measured and indicated. I think about 60% of the resources is in the indicated category. And that was important to demonstrate the density of a very high grade deposit, right? You don't want to say, oh no, it's really just blending a high grade hits across our North Shoot. And so I think to put a package around a project that becomes interesting, you want to at least get to that 100 million ounce mark in order to have a sufficient project that becomes the interest of a mid-tier or larger silver player. And so we won't start down a PEA path until we get to some of those significant milestones. But it doesn't mean we don't start doing the work now. And then there's an additional pathway that we are working on, and I think it's fair to be frank. When you have an extremely high grade deposit, okay, that's a great starting point because it's an implication of profitability. The next thing I want to say is people, they always talk about narrow veins. But if you look at the other projects currently operating in Colombia, there's projects such as Buriticá, Marmato, and others that started off narrow veins, increased the number of faces over time. Buriticá is now producing 200,000 ounces a year of gold, right? So very narrow veins can produce really big, high productions when they're higher grade, right? Colombia understands how to mine in this style. It's a very common mining method. So it's got good miners and they know how to do it. It's very doable, and we have big projects around us that have started just that way. But if you have very high grade, it's indicative of very high value. The metallurgical test work also shows a very high recovery. And I think what gets missed a lot is the silver at Santa Ana is a sulfide. So it's not floating with a zinc. It's not floating with a lead or a pyrite or another associated with another sulfide. The silver is actually floating. So we're producing a very high grade precious metal concentrate. So high grade that it is possible to smelt directly. You could literally take that concentrate and create a doré. If you get paid for your silver in a zinc concentrate, you're only going to get paid maybe 75% of your silver if you're lucky, right? So it's not, you don't get the value out. In a doré bar, it's worth 98 to 99% of the silver. So you have a high grade, high recovery, and a high payable. This is kind of, I call it the trifecta. What's important about it is that it decouples you from scale. You don't have to have a really big project to be profitable. You don't need the need for scale to reduce the operating costs. And so that's another pathway we're going down, which would be take a very small pilot project and demonstrate that you could take up this project into production and be profitable. It's not the major focus, but it significantly de-risks the project because it demonstrates there's a clear pathway to eventually go into production. And if it's profitable at a very small scale, why wouldn't it be profitable at a larger scale? And so that's I would call it a secondary pathway, but it is something that we are looking into and working on as a significant strategy, because it just eliminates all those quick. Can you mine it? Can you do it profitably? Can you recover it? Is this all doable? And you have something you can point at. And of course, it slightly de-risks you in terms of access to capital. It's not the solution, obviously, at that size, but it is a pathway. So those are the other things that we are doing in order to demonstrate this. And you mentioned something earlier. Just want to reinforce it. The true pure silver grade of Santa Ana is by far one of the highest in the world. And what also means it's almost 3/4 pure silver. It's true silver. And so when we say it's a silver project, it's a true silver project. And it's one of very, very few. I've actually only know of another that even has a resource that is a primary silver project. And so if you look and people are interested in how to find ways to leverage, silver price is delinked right now. It's undervalued and we had 3 years of deficit. How do you leverage yourself in terms of silver price? And then Santa Ana obviously is highly leveraged to the overall silver price.
Now, you're mentioning some of the other mines in Colombia. I'm familiar with Aris Mining's Marmato. I believe that's one of the highest grade gold mines in one of the top 5 or something along those lines. Not big, but high grade. It has kept growing over time, but that's sort of the approach that they've had is chase high grade first, start a small operation, and then expand from then on. But you're talking about growing that MRE. So why chase size instead of chasing grades right now?
Okay, so the reason why you chase a very small operation is because obviously it's easier and quicker to permit. It's not it's not capital intensive. You could raise. I think we have quotes for a 40-ton per day plant turnkey is about $750,000. So it's not a burden on the company. But why do you look at in terms of scale, in terms of the resource is if you want to be interesting to a consolidator, somebody who is wanting to build their production pipeline, right, it has to be significant enough for them to be interested in it. And again, raising $750,000 for a very small plant, we could do it with equity, a silver loan, the convertible. There's a million different methodologies that would make it easy to finance. But if you start getting into that $100 million capital range, then you need the feasibility study. You need to have all the engineering work, and you need to make it worthwhile that somebody says, I want to add that production profile to my portfolio. And so then in that case, scale is important. And so it's the reason why we don't want to go down a pathway of a project development when you're looking at 37 million ounces and want to be able to put a limit around a much larger project that becomes interesting to others. But I want to have my cake and eat it too, right? I want to have all those different options available to continue to move and create value over an extended period of time. I've seen other projects where you hit a wall, right, where you're left with no options to create value for a company, and you're kind of stuck, and then the vultures come in. And so we want multiple pathways to create value, whether it's leveraged. You don't want to be just leveraged to silver. You don't want to be just leveraged to a resource. You want to be able to have multiple pathways of demonstrating value, right?
Sure. So where do you go to chase that on the land package? Because I'm looking at a map here. The 7 veins that your MRE comes from are sort of in the northern part of your titles that you have. There's a one long vein, Alaska, that is sort of the northernmost vein that is out there. Which of those veins do you want to go to test this year? When do you start? How much are you drilling? Talk to me about that.
Okay, I'm gonna answer that in multiple parts. First, even after the resource, there was even some, I think even Alaska was one, or at least a parallel vein to Alaska, where we had some drilling in it, but not enough density to be able to pull it into the resource. But my overall goal right now is to be able to demonstrate a pathway to a much larger resource. So we're really looking at some of the outside targets, some of those orange lines, I'm guessing, on that same map where we've mapped it at surface, done some trenching or channel sampling, so it's a bona fide target, and be able to make it a bona fide discovery. And then find out, that it's now on the list of, okay, we keep drilling this, we're going to be adding resources, and we want to create that pathway. So we're not even going to continue to extend along strike or extend at depth or re-drill right now on areas that are already a discovery, because it's in the inventory, right? And we really need to demonstrate. So it's really about walking right now down, to the southwest on that map, working away from it. Because the other reason you don't want to take gigantic steps away is because you've demonstrated how you work with your community and landowners, et cetera, and you're building off of your reputation, and the way that you do business. And so you're kind of walking through this systematically. And the other thing that's difficult to understand is these are ore shoots, right? So you have a vein. It's not easy, right? I mean, you can see a vein on surface, you can guess how it's going to act underground, but the first step is actually to understand the structure of that vein underground, because the other piece is the ore shoot often does not act in the same way as a vein does. Its plunge can be different than the dip of a vein, for example. So step one, identify it at surface. Step two, make sure it has grade at surface. Step three is identify the structure of the vein underground. And step three is chase for the ore shoot, which are normally extremely structural controlled. And this is same for Santa Ana and all these other mines that we just discussed earlier, right? These are structurally controlled ore shoots where you have a very high grade component of that vein. You might see mineralization at some degree throughout all the vein, but you're really looking for the higher grade section of these vein systems. So it's systematic. It takes discipline. And it's sometimes not as fast. So at the second half of last year, we went from pure resource to starting that hunting process. And I'm going to be frank, it was slow and inaccurate. And we were trying out a new drill contractor and it didn't work out. So we're going back to our old drill contractor to start with. And we're in that, we've demobbed, and now we're going to be remobilizing to bring and start that work back up. I'm assuming it will take around February to get everything reset up and starting people back from vacations, and we need to still mobilize the drill to site. But that will be the focus, will be on converting bona fide targets to bona fide discoveries, right? Because we would like to say, okay, these were the 7 veins that were incorporated into our resource, and these are the bona fide discoveries we have, and these are where we're going to be focusing on adding additional resources and demonstrate this isn't going from 37 million ounces to 45 million ounces. This is going from 37 to 60 to 100, and be able to demonstrate a larger pathway. And so that's going to be the focus, the primary focus of the company in 2024.
How many meters do you think it's going to get you to go to that, supposed 100 million ounce deposit?
So, and I'm going to talk to that in 2 ways. One is we have a huge amount of our resources currently in measured and indicated, and that was necessary. I think it was necessary. But as in these incremental steps, we can focus mostly on inferred, because we can demonstrate with higher confidence how the geostatistics of these veins hold together. And so with 10,000, I think we can do about 1,000 meters a month with a single drill. So the goal would be to get to 10,000 meters in this year. The goal would be to be continuously drilling. If market changes, then we can add additional drills, but I don't see the value right now in going gangbusters with too many drills on site. And that could get us to the goal would be to be able to get to a significant point where we could do a significant increase in the resource. I don't think it's going to get us to that complete pathway. I'm guessing it will take until 2025 to be able to get to that magical milestone that we have in our head of being able to push the MRE above 100 million ounces. But the goal is to be able to demonstrate that pathway by the end of the year. That people can see how this is going to happen. And we will also judge the point of when we do that updated resource, because I'm keen on, I don't want to make small incremental steps. I want to demonstrate that this is something that is going to be growing in leaps and bounds. So we'll be playing that by ear based on results and how we can execute on this year's plan.
Okay, so by the end of the year, and how many meters do you think you're gonna have put into the ground by the end of the year?
Our goal is to get 10,000. And one of the reasons we changed the contractor, because they were nowhere close, right? We did since June about 3,000 meters. So it was very frustrating.
Okay.
So we would like to be able to get to that 1,000 plus meters per month. You're hunting, so your new pads, you're moving the drills a lot. So, but you also have to maintain productivity and accuracy. It's keen because that's what you're doing. The first few drill holes really aren't to, I mean, you can get lucky, is to hit that mother lode. It's really to understand the structure and the behavior of that vein to be able to track and understand the ore shoot.
Do you have an offer for that 10,000 meters already? Like, how much is that going to cost you?
Yeah, the drilling contractor pricing isn't dramatically different. I think our average price of drilling is around $200 per meter, just the drilling component. So we're talking about $2 million. It's and then of course everything on top of that. So our average cost with a drill running is about $300,000 a month to maintain that drill, and we're working even to crunch that down. We want to make sure we're getting efficiency and driving as much value, cutting down on G&A. I'm in a single office in Colombia, which obviously is completely different than the cost structure in Vancouver, bringing more of the team. I speak fluent Spanish, so I'm not afraid to have a lot of my team around me that are local, and I think it's important to keep that local content and it's cost intelligent.
Sure. I do want to talk about the G&A as we move on. How are you going to be announcing drill results with this one? Is it going to be vein per vein, hole per hole, or just everything at once? How are you planning that?
Yeah, in retrospect, I should have probably done it differently because we kind of went out searching and defining 4 different areas in the end of the first 3,000 meters. But obviously, none of those 4 got across to a finish line. And I think the goal here would be to announcing them as packages, right? When you get between target, understand structure, and now you have a bona fide discovery where you have some idea of how that ore shoot, and describe it on a vein per vein basis, because that's the goal, right? It's like, okay, we had 7 before, now we have an 8 in our, and then we're gonna have 9, and then we're gonna have 10 that we know that are gonna build out the resource, and that's how it's most likely. So it's not spotty. We're beyond the point where just an individual drill result can drive excitement, and I think it's important to be able to explain to shareholders how this fits into the bigger picture and the strategy. And so it will be it might only be 2 or 3 holes within a individual ore shoot, but we will be able to do that on an ore shoot by ore shoot basis.
Right. Okay.
That's the goal.
Okay. Sure. Just for a second, go back to what you said about drilling. You said it's $300 to keep the drill starting. I don't assume that's including assays. What do you think is the all-in cost per meter?
Yeah, so that works out. Math is pretty easy. That's $300 a meter all in. That's everything. That's the operational team, assays, the whole kit and caboodle in terms of operational. Less, and so the only thing on top of that would be corporate G&A, and then in both Colombia and in corporate in Vancouver.
That's right. Okay, so it's $3 million for the drilling. Are you doing any more metallurgy or anything else walking the bush?
We are, and I'm sorry, the mining engineer loves talking about these kind of things, but when you already have 93% recovery from flotation alone, right? And it's a precious metal concentrate. I keep reinforcing this, right? You notice a bit of arsenic, but that's a precious metal concentrate. That's not an ore issue, right? That's something that's already running 8,000 grams per ton silver, right? So it's a very high grade concentrate. So, the other, 7%, where's it? And the majority of it is native silver, and there's a little bit of electrum, but mostly it's native. So the thing we're working on now would be take a gravity separation method on the front end of a flotation circuit, right? So to bump up the recovery, see what kind of recovery improvement we can get with gravity separation followed by a flotation. And I think it will be a dramatic improvement, but it also is environmentally friendly, right? We could potentially be producing silver doré, right, without leaching. And that's huge, right? That's a big deal. I mean, that's something we're striving for. And of course, gravity is just a physical separation method. And on top of that, we have a very inert tails, right? So and it's high grade underground mining. I think that the overall environmental footprint of a potential project could be extremely interesting, right? We have a kind of all these things going very positively for the project.
Right. Why I'm asking this is because I'm trying to work out how much money in total you're going to spend this year. So that's where we're going to. But since we're talking about metallurgy, I also want to talk about that because during metallurgical testing last time, as I mentioned, arsenic levels were 0.4%. I'm not a metallurgist by any means or a geologist or anything like that. But as far as I understand, that's no reason for concern. Concern might start happening above 0.7 or even higher. But do talk to me about arsenic and other deleterious elements in here in regards to how much of a penalty, if any, they could be, as well as what they could mean for permitting of a mining operation or anything else, really.
Yeah, this is one of the interesting questions when we look at project development, right? It's very easy to understand your payables for doré. It's very easy to understand a payable for a copper concentrate. But when you get into zinc concentrates and lead concentrates and sulfide concentrates and precious metal concentrates, it's a moving picture, right? It moves a lot faster, which is another reason why we'd like to be able to get to doré, right? It's much higher payable. But we have gone to our friends, the ones who market and trade these types of concentrates, and indications back is that there would be no penalty, right? And I think a more important factor at this stage is how high of a grade of precious metal concentrate you can produce, and that's a real moving target. If we were talking gold, if you have anything under 100 grams, your payable is terrible. If you can get to 200 grams, your payable is okay, right? And so that has a bigger impact is how much, what kind of grade you can get into your concentrate. But from a deleterious element perspective, I think we're within the current norm of ranges, right? That can change. I mean, let's be frank, that can change, and it depends whose smelter you're sending your stuff to. But right now, all indications is that we wouldn't see any sort of penalty for our material.
Forgive the silly questions if they are such, but where is this? Like, could you but does arsenic pick up at depth? Does it pick up more towards the north? Is it like where is the arsenic? I don't know if it's a stupid question or not, but yeah.
So far, it seems to be a small percentage. I mean, it's in an individual drill hole, it's almost insignificant, right? We don't see it, and we don't see it in our tails, right? We don't see any indications of having issues in our tails. It's when you're concentrating that material, right, into a concentrate where you're seeing it. But again, I think it would be because, remember, this is 8,000 grams per ton, right? If you were seeing this in a zinc concentrate that might have, I don't know, 100 grams per ton zinc, and you see a 0.4% arsenic, you might be concerned, right? So you have to think that it's been ultra concentrated, any additional metals. So they're really insignificant.
Right. Okay. So where I'm coming from with that question is because I was wondering, like, I mean, does it pick up the higher up the mountain you go, there's more arsenic or something like that? I probably sound very silly right now. But
No, but it is a real concern when you see arsenopyrite, right? And
yeah,
your gold or silver is associated with that kind of mineralization, because then it's a big, it can be very high percentages. So we're talking 10% of your material, and then you have to find ways to manage that issue, both in your wastes and your tails and in your concentrates. So we don't see arsenopyrite within our deposit. You don't really pick it up in the individual deposit, but obviously it exists as it exists, in any rock you pick up on the planet.
Okay, but so $3 million to drill, 2.5 on G&E. Does that sound reasonable, or do you think you're going to cut it below 2?
Funny, our G&A is about a little under $100,000 a month, and is mostly driven on marketing activity, and that to me is more market driven. So I think that we can keep our all-in cost. My goal is to get it down within drill operating to about $400,000 a month. That's my goal, and bring it down to that level.
Okay,
and we're talking metallurgical test work, maybe 100,000 or 200,000 additional dollars. We do have some minimal engineering and environmentally associated. We're going to be doing just a little bit of hydrogeology and geotechnical work also, but these are not big sums. These are not big numbered programs.
But that's way less than what I see in the filings of last year. I'm looking at them right now. So last year was 1.2 in general administrative, 660 in investor relations, 530 on professional fees, stock-based compensation is stocks, I don't care, and then wage and benefits 550. That's your almost $3 million, right? Yeah, well, it's actually very close to $3 million. So you want to go from 3 million to 1.5? So basically cut it in half.
And we're already partway there. I think we're already today at a current burn about 2.4. We've done some significant reductions. I don't know how to say. I'm gonna say this in the nicest way possible, right? My presence in Colombia is very helpful, right? It's and because I speak Spanish, it allows me to run a much more efficient organization.
Okay. Well, then what
And
are you...
I do the marketing, right? So I'm not afraid to get up and talk and be the face of the company.
But then what do you cut out of the budget to? I mean, cutting it in half is not an easy feat. So what do you cut out?
So we've already reduced some of the significant compensation. We've reduced overall personnel is a big piece. Marketing is always a manageable, increase or decrease. So if things turn around and market starts getting better, then I'm going to be way off on my numbers, because obviously we're going to be spending a whole lot more time going to conferences, going out, telling people about the story, because there's value can be created from doing that. But the biggest reductions have been in salaries and the number of bodies required to manage the company.
Okay.
Right.
Just as long as you don't...
I'm going to go through an easy description, right? To get a part-time graphic artist to support you in Canada is $5,000 a month, and a full-time graphic artist in Colombia is $1,000. So it's those are the pulling things into Colombia, and I'm filling all multiple boots, right? By being in Colombia myself, a lot more of the local management, and it's continuing to be the executive management at the same time.
Right.
More bang for the buck.
Just as long as you don't cut out Kathy, because I think she does a good job. Her and I met at a conference a while back, and she pitched me in the... She actually basically made sure that this interview happens, and you're not paying for this interview. So she did a good job. Yeah,
Kathy's not going anywhere. Yeah, she is a energizer bunny of productivity and efficiency. So yeah, we're a great team. I love working with her.
I can agree with that. Good, but okay. So wait, you close the books at the end of the year. How much money have you spent total drill and everything? You said $300,000, and then metallurgy on top of that. So we're talking in the realm of like $4 to $5 million for the total of this year.
Correct.
Okay. And how much money do you have right now?
Today we are pulling money in when available every so often on the ATM when it's not going to put a damper on share price. We had a pretty good time right at the end of the year post November, which I would like to go back to because you're right. It's everybody's been incredibly slammed over the last month. It's been disheartening, but we can tell that there's a compelling story here that can drive significant value. So we have about $1 million in the bank today, and it might be a little bit higher than that actually, between Columbia and call it 1.5. So we have a little bit, with keeping our burn into a reasonable level to be able to time a larger financing for the budget of the entire year, based on better market conditions. And there's definitely an anticipation of that going on right now, which is quite comforting. It's a question of when. But the backdrop in silver is very interesting with the significant deficit. And we're not talking, it's a 2 or 3%. It's like a 15% annual deficit between supply and demand in silver over 3 years. My only concern is we get to the point where it has to be like uranium until people are scrambling to actually fill supply physically, that prices don't start to increase. I hope there's a little bit of forward looking on silver, but it has a potential to have that kind of train wreck where people just cannot get silver to build the products and that need to be made for supporting electric vehicles or any other component of the industry use, because that's over 3 years. I remember as a mining engineer in 25 years, people trying to tout silver as an industrial metal and kind of giggled because it really wasn't. But over the last 3 years, it's gone from about 60%, 50% of the consumption of silver was industrial. Now it's 60%. It is a true industrial metal now. And that industrial consumption, you're on some of the products are on that curve where things start going geometric. When it goes from 1 to 2%, you don't notice. When it goes to 2 to 4%, you don't notice. But when it goes from 10 to 20%, 20 to 40%, these kind of numbers put a massive strain on the supply. And we're getting into that point of the curve in silver. So when that creates a price correction is the question. But without a doubt, it's going to create a price correction.
Well, let's hope it's not quite like uranium, because uranium's run 100% over the last year, and some of the equities, especially the ones of your size, haven't really done much by judging by my own portfolio at least. But that aside, how much money so you have $1 million in cash? How much of the ATM facility is still open?
Oh, I don't know, but I'm guessing I think we opened a $10 million facility, I think, if is that correct? So it probably still has another 8
I
at
thought it
least
was
in
5,
it. We just
actually.
redid it. About 5. Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
No, but I mean, I thought the whole ATM facility was 5.
That sounds right. That sounds right.
Okay,
right.
sure.
I think we have to renew it every 18 months or something like that. So it's kind of a rolling number.
But that's what you're going to use to finance yourself through that $4 to $5 million spend this year.
No,
Okay.
that would not be the goal. The
Okay.
goal would be that allows us some throttle to be able to properly pick when we do a larger financing.
Okay, sure. Do you have any plans of optioning out or selling maybe some of the other assets in order to fund exploration here? And I mean, maybe you want it, but is that really a realistic scenario where you can do it too?
Absolutely. In last year's transition, I got a lot of flack for it. It was one of the first things coming in, kind of maybe halfway walked as it was going on, was the acquisition of Zacapa.
Yeah.
Picking up some additional assets when it was a little confusing because I'm not even using that gold component of the Outcrop silver and gold anymore, because we had silver and gold projects and that was the focus, but now we are 100% focused on silver. That is the major focus, and that's where we can create the significant value. So we have additional assets, but one of the reasons we picked them up is because they were so undervalued, and we knew that moving into a slightly different market, those become highly valuable assets to be able to divest. Worst case, they're a political risk insurance, but the real case was that these will create value for the company moving forward. And what's interesting now is I think there is an anticipation of another bull run across the sector, right? I'm not just talking, in silver. In this, it's across the sector. There's some anticipation of coming up into a starting of a new super cycle. How that plays out, it'll probably be a little choppy. But for the first time, you have people looking for bona fide assets because people, I think, want to be positioned for that new upswing. And so, yes, it's not even something we're hoping for. It's something that we're actively working on, is in order to make sure we have our data room in set. We have project descriptions on all these things. We can look at the status, know the title status, have everything in place. So when people, are starting to sniff and ask and look, we have things to demonstrate. And we are in conversations already with different groups over individual assets. And yes, we are definitely interested in divesting. I think the least interest would be a JV, right? Because I don't see value coming into the company because of a gold asset, right? I want to make sure it's we continue on a pure silver. I'm not saying we won't do it, but it's not. I think more it would be to completely divest, maybe a share component or a cash component that helps fund our focus operations and gives us a tie into blue sky, right? So that's more of the focus of what we'd like to do is truly spin out some of these assets.
Okay. Well, so that could be an alley for financing the company. What about warrants? You do have a fair share of warrants there, but what is it, like 90 million-ish? I'm not sure. I'll probably have their state somewhere around here, but do you expect any warrants money to be coming in anytime soon?
We do have some. I think about half of those are heavily underwater and will be expiring soon. And there is a component, if we have a nice little run, we're actually getting close to there because I think about the 30-cent level. I think some of the warrants come into play, and it is a part of the option. So it is possible that there's some alternative routes, but right now that's would be nice, right? The number one focus right now would be continue what we're doing, working on the burn rate, keep things moving forward until we can finance at a better level for the company for the overall program of 2024.
Right. Okay. Well, that's sort of my biggest takeaway, if you will. So it's basically you're trying to grow the MRE here by a lot, not by a little bit. You're spending $5 million, give or take, on everything to try and do that while also keeping lights on within that budget. And you're hoping to do that on a 10,000 meter drill budget, basically. You're starting in February, or at least you're hoping to start in February and do about 1,000 meters a month and then report it as it makes sense as you go. Oh, well, I didn't ask you that. When is the next assay result then going to be? If you start in February, through February, you do 1,000 meters, and then you put 6 weeks to that. What are you announcing assay results in April, or how do you see it?
It's a difficult question because we're trying to package it around the way I described it. And I would say if we're starting in February, it would be mobilizing, and I wouldn't really think it's getting to earnest until sometime in March. And that would mean the earliest would be April. We just put out a news release and kind of a summary of where everything was going to date. But I can say that once we start getting in these things into a line, because they're kind of, there's start the drill, get to understand the structure, start hunting for the ore shoot. But as some of these targets are converting, it will be a nice news flow, right? But that's the goal. And that was one of the frustrations at the end of last year was we're going at 4 different targets all at the same time. None of them are really getting across that finish line, but they are all extremely close now. But 3,000 meters is just too painfully slow over a 6-month period. So about 1,000, I think we could be seeing a continuous update on a monthly basis as one by one these are coming into perspective. That's the goal.
Right.
That is the goal.
Okay. Good. Got it. Well, again, not too complicated of a situation here that I'm looking at. Grow MRE, 10,000 meters of drilling, spend $5 million to do that. Yeah, I think I'm basically all out of questions. What is a question that some of the smarter people you talk to ask you, but I'm failing to ask you here?
Oh, I think we went over. Okay, so I'll let you. The really sophisticated people want to know how fast we can get a pilot operation into production, because they understand how big of a de-risk that would be for the project. And that's big, because I think some of the compelling questions are, is this possible in Colombia? Despite all the facts, right? Despite 10 kilometers south of us, there's an operating gold mine, or some of the biggest gold, there's projects producing 200,000 ounces a year around us, right? Is there a pathway? And being able to demonstrate that to market is a significant catalyst. So I think in private conversations, there's a lot of focus on the pilot concept.
Well, what is your gut telling you? How long can that take?
I tell them, I'll tell you when I get into submitting the permit for it.
Fair
Right.
enough.
So it's I I have enough experience in South America that this is about relationships and developing the relationship. So it's more than just, okay, will you submit a permit, and then 3 months later you get the first comments, and then it takes another 3 months. And it's really about building the relationships in order to be successful. We're going the lowest route. It's would be small scale production size, very small, very, very small, that would qualify as small scale production. We don't have cyanide, right? We probably do a small dry stack tailings. It's underground with some backfill. Its footprint is extremely small. But you want to make sure you have all your ducks in the row and your community is on board and they understand the concept and why you're doing it, and it'll help demonstrate what it would look like in the future. So getting all those things aligned, and that's what we're doing right now. We are working on the permitting processes, but we're also working on the overall project schedule of how we would roll this out. So we're optimistic that by the end of the year, we'll be able to announce that we're turning the shovel over, putting the shovel into the ground.
It's an aggressive timeline. I will be looking forward to follow along with that story. Sounds like you're gonna have a lot of news and stuff to talk about. So yeah, I'd be happy to follow along. Thank you so much for investing your time in me, and I wish we can do this again soon.
Yeah, thank you for a really in-depth conversation. It was very enjoyable to really get underneath behind the black curtain and look at it.